Hey, this is Mark from the Run Testers. Now, in the tech world, September is usually known as launch month, and we have had a lot of new watches launch this year. That includes 3 new Apple Watch models. And in this video, we're going to be talking about experiences so far with the Apple Watch Series 11. We have done a first run video with the Apple Watch Ultra 3, and we'll stick a link up so you can have a watch of that after this video. So before myself, Nick and Kieran all get into some early running thoughts, we'll take you through what's new on the Series 11 from the Series 10, get into our experiences so far and let you know what we're thinking of the Apple Watch Series 11 so far, and whether it's going to be a better fit for runners, or whether it's going to be roughly the same as the Apple Watch Series 10. Okay, so what do you need to know about the Apple Watch Series 11? So let's start with design and what is actually new and different. There's actually a lot that's very similar to the Series 10. You've got 2 sizes here. Again, it's the same sizes. They're the same thickness as the Apple Watch Series 10. The big differences lie with the number of colors that you have now. There's 7 versus 6 compared to the Series 10. You've got this new natural titanium finish. There's also a difference in terms of the protection for the screen against scratches. If you go for the aluminium model, you get this tougher Ion-X glass. On the titanium version, you are getting sapphire glass as well. But in terms of everything else, the design has largely stayed the same. So in terms of features in general and the kind of more running focused ones, actually it's very similar again to the Series 10. You've got the same GPS sensor, same heart rate sensor. It obviously runs on watchOS 26, which is the latest version of Apple's operating system, which will obviously be available on the Series 10 as well. And that brings features like the Workout Buddy, which is kind of powered by Apple's new intelligence software as well. You've got the ability to kind of create track workouts on the watch as well too. One of the differences from a smartwatch point of view is you've got that kind of added 5G connectivity on the Series 11, which you don't get on the Series 10. Obviously won't be able to roll back to the Series 10. And then battery life is another area where there are some differences between the Series 11 and the Series 10. Now, you are getting more battery life. It's gone from 18 hours to 24 hours on the Series 11. You are also getting more battery in the kind of low power battery mode. So it's 38 hours compared to 36 hours. And you are getting an hour extra in the kind of GPS battery life as well. So it's gone from 7 hours to 8 hours. So there are some improvements, maybe not dramatic ones, but it definitely sees the kind of flagship series model kind of up those battery life numbers and get it pushing a little bit more compared to the Series 10.
So I've had the Apple Watch Series 11 in for about 4 days now, and I've run with it 4 times, and so far the experience has been very good with using the watch. It does feel quite similar to the Apple Watch Series 10. You're getting a lot of the same kind of strengths and weaknesses as you have with that watch, but it's always a reminder when we get a new series watching just how nice this design is. Like, I really like how slim and sleek it is on the wrist. Like, you've got a big screen there, but it does feel really small and weightless on the wrist compared to even the Ultra 2 and other big sports watches. So there are definitely aspects of the design that make it probably my favourite design in a watch, but it loses out with the fact that it hasn't got the button for taking laps and that kind of thing, and no dual band GPS. The same design problems I guess I had with the previous models have carried over to the Series 11. In terms of new stuff on the watch, the battery is a little bit better, and it is noticeably better. Like, you're making it for a day very comfortably, even with quite a long run with the Series 11, and it's just something you vaguely are aware of throughout the time using it compared to the previous model. It's just you've always got a little bit more battery left, which is helpful in opening up more opportunities to charge the watch, but it is still a watch that will only last you like a day and a bit before you have to charge it, which is very different to most sports watches, obviously. On the run, for me, the GPS and heart rate tracking have been really good with the Apple Watch Series 11, actually. I think the GPS tracks it has produced have been a bit more higgledy-piggledy and go a bit wilder at corners than dual band watches, including the Ultra 2 and the Phoenix 8 Pro I've been testing it against, but the overall pacing and distance stats on the watch have been pretty good. Like, it's not going completely crazy off course on these routes. It just doesn't have quite the same precision you get from a dual band GPS, but I think it's pretty much fine for general use, and most runners won't notice it too much. It might be more of a problem if you are in a city centre when you might get some slightly wilder GPS stuff. The pacing has been good in this watch. I talked about this also in our Apple Watch Ultra 3 first look, but I used to have a big problem with split pace on the Apple Watch where it would just be wrong for me. Like, it would read too slow every time you started a new split and then gradually correct over the course of that split. And you could really see it when you're running at a steady pace in something like a race or a long session where you'd hit the mile or kilometre lap and get your lap time, and then you'd see the pace is suddenly way higher than that, even though you hadn't changed pace. That's no longer the case with the Series 11 and the Ultra 3, or even the previous models since the latest kind of software updates on the watch. You're now getting really solid split pace information on the Apple Watch, which is good. Heart rate's also been very good in the Series 11 in my testing so far, better than the Apple Watch Ultra 3 actually, which has been a bit more incorrect during runs. The Series 11 has matched up very closely with the chest strap in my runs so far, but we'll do a lot more testing on that before talking about it in our full review. You've got the new workout app on the watch in terms of the layout, which I do think is a bit better. You can also now create structured workouts in the fitness app on the phone, which is very helpful with the watch. You still don't get precision start with the Apple Watch Series 11, which is annoying to me. Like, it's not a big feature that should just be restricted to the Ultra, that you can see that you've got GPS and heart rate locked on before you start. It should be on the Series 11 in my opinion, but it isn't, and that is still a bit annoying. The only other thing is you're missing out on compared to the Ultra. It is really that extra button and dual band GPS, but I mean, the Apple Watch has 2 buttons, the Series 11. They could make one of that be a lap button during workouts. I think that would really help me out and lots of runners out, but yeah, you are losing out on some of those more sport specific features that you do get on the more expensive, larger Ultra 3. Some other new software stuff, Workout Buddy so far has been something I've not been very impressed with on either of the Apple Watches. It's basically another one of these AI features, I think, that just tells you your stats again in a slightly different way, and it doesn't really bring anything new to the table the same way I haven't been very impressed by Garmin's AI, Strava's AI. I think people want to call quite basic features AI because AI is very hot, and actually it's not that intelligent. It's just your stats again. We'll see if it develops from here. I mean, there's scope for it to be more interesting once it has a whole load of data on you, and I have had moments on the run where it's told me, oh, you just ran your X mile for the year, your 1,000th mile of the year, and that's vaguely interesting to hear, but for the most part it just says, it just gives you your lap information again at the end of each mile or kilometre split, and that's not very helpful. It's already on my wrist, and that's why I'm wearing the watch. The sleep score also seems a bit odd to me in terms of it rates your sleep very highly, I find, because you're getting so many points just for having a consistent bedtime, and the overall sleep duration, that can easily be 60 or 70 out of 100 straight away. And then even if you're then interrupted the entire night, as I often am by my kids, you can lose most of those points and still get quite a high sleep score. So I do think the actual number might look a bit high and artificially high when you see it each morning, when you might necessarily feel you've slept that well. But there's a bit of information in there. The actual sleep tracking on the watch I do think is very accurate and actually better at catching things like interruptions in the night than even the Garmin sleep index on my arm, which has sometimes missed me having to get up in the night and that kind of thing. So I do think it's an accurate sleep tracker. I think the sleep score just seems a bit high in the morning, and you're going to wake up occasionally, have a terrible night's sleep and be told you slept very well when you haven't.
So into that first run, and I have only done one run with the Apple Watch Series 11 so far, and I've got the 46mm version, and it is the one with the aluminium case, which has that kind of stronger Ion X protection for the display against scratches. The titanium Series 11 has sapphire glass. Now, from a design point of view, I've got the 46mm Series 10. I put them side by side, and they are identical. The thickness is the same. The buttons obviously are the same as well. The screen resolution, size, brightness, all, not a lot to report here in terms of that design, aside from that kind of extra kind of screen protection. In terms of run tracking performance, it's the same GPS kind of setup, heart rate sensor. You don't have that dual band GPS kind of setup that you do get on the Ultra 2 and Ultra 3. So you're not going to get the best in GPS kind of support on an Apple Watch right now. So the plan was to run with the Series 11 and the Series 10. Unfortunately, Apple sent me a strap for the Series 11 that was too big, so I ended up having to use the strap from the Series 10 on the Series 11 instead, which at least tells you that the straps do work across the 2 different versions of the model. Now, as well as the Series 11, I also had the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro Micro LED, and that was paired to a heart rate monitor chest strap. I also ran with the iPhone fitness app running, and that was paired to the Apple AirPods Pro 3, so another source of GPS and heart rate data there as well. Now, as I've seen with the GPS performance in general with the Apple Watch series line, it's generally been good, but I do know that you can get more or better accuracy from the Ultra line, and it was a little bit short, a little bit off on pacing, not a huge amount, but definitely a little bit off compared to the Garmin watch. The heart rate monitor performance actually performed pretty well against the heart rate monitor chest strap. So from that point of view, it looked pretty good, particularly for that type of session where we expect it to kind of falter a little bit more. But I think just given compared to the Apple Watch Ultra size, I think the series in general, I get a better kind of performance out of that sensor. So that looked pretty good overall. And to battery life, where there are some changes compared to the Series 10. Now, I did kind of roughly 40 minutes of running, a little bit of a warm up on top of that, and I saw a battery life drop of less than 10%. Now, it's worth mentioning that when Apple kind of states that it does these kind of GPS battery life tests, it doesn't have it connected to an iPhone. I didn't on this occasion, so it'd feel like these numbers kind of probably reflect what Apple is promising here. Not the best numbers you'll find on a running watch, and particularly a watch that kind of sits at around the price of the Series 11, but there is a little bit of an improvement compared to the Series 10.
So for this first impressions video, I've had the Apple Watch Series 11 on for just a couple of days. Went through a whole battery cycle in that time though. But as I said in our Apple Watch Ultra 3 first run video, which is up on the channel now, these are really, really very early thoughts. Much more testing is needed before we can go into delivering verdicts on these devices. But here are some nuts and bolts of the sort of early testing, starting with the battery life and the GPS and heart rate accuracy and the design. On battery life, as I'm recording this, my Apple Watch Series 11 had lasted 1.5 days with 2 hours GPS tracking, with medium use of the smartwatch tools before it died. For comparison, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 was still at 40% when the Apple Watch Series 11 died on me. When it comes to tracking runs, on paper, Apple says the staying power of the Apple Watch Series 11 should reach up to 8 hours using GPS and heart rate. In my approximately 1 hour runs, the Apple Watch Series 11 burned 11% and 15%, so that is a bit faster than those official claims. And it was surprisingly higher than what I've got on record from my prior tests on the Apple Watch 10, which averaged 7 to 8%. But maybe that hourly burn will sort of basically drop off as you extend the runs to 2 to 3 hours and come at a lower rate. But we will do some tests on that to find out. Then looking at the overnight battery burn, the Apple Watch Series 11 was 13%. That is down from 17% on the Series 10. So that's better overnight, which may eke out longer time overall. As I said, on a single charge, I got 1.5 days with 2 runs, so that is better than I had from the Series 10. We're still obviously a long way off the performance of dedicated running watches, which will go for up to a week, but the fast charge here, 80% in just 30 minutes, does go some way to offsetting that difference. And you are getting a lot of daily smarts as well. When it comes to testing the accuracy in those initial tests, I did one 10k in London to sort of test it in some urban areas, not anything particularly really built up, but a few underpasses, went through some parks, that kind of thing. I also did one 9-miler at the home of England's sort of football team's training, which is St George's Park. It was really rural, nice clear skies throughout. The GPS performance looks to be solid so far, even without the multiband tools of the Ultra 3. The Series 11 was good at locking me to the paths in both environments. It logged overall distances that were closely matched to the Apple Watch Ultra 3. So right now, that is not something I would necessarily say you want to upgrade for to get on the Apple Watch Ultra 3. They were pretty much on par. On heart rate, the Watch 11 was largely reliable too, up against the Garmin HRM 600 chest strap. During the 10k steady, the averages and max reads came in identical to the chest strap. For the 9-miler, where I had some hills and a few more kind of shifts in intensity, the averages came in 3 beats per minute higher on the Apple Watch than the chest strap, and the max hit quite notable kind of higher, 172 beats per minute to 164 on the chest strap. So there's some good, some not perfect. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens when you start to throw in proper intervals in that, but still pretty good for an optical, I would say. Then on to some more general thoughts. When it comes to design, I tested the 46mm Apple Watch, which I think strikes a really nice balance between size and wearability. It's light, it's easy to wear to sleep, but it feels solid and robust on the wrist. The last Series 10 I tested was a smaller version, which I sort of found was a little bit dainty. So it was really nice and light, but I just wanted a bit more presence on the wrist. Now, I've never had a problem with my Apple Watch screen scratching, but the boosted scratch resistance is welcome. If you have had knocks before, that is going to be tougher now. Obviously, I haven't tested it in the 2 days, but on paper at least. So I've been testing the Series 11 alongside the Apple Watch Ultra 3. While this one, the Ultra 3, does have the brighter display. It's pumping out 3,000 nits to the 2,000 nits you're getting on the Series 11. I think the Series 11 has a lovely sort of sharp, easy to read, bright screen with plenty of real estate for your stats. And it's a top performing screen when it comes to kind of running watches and smart watches. I had no problem with legibility and all that kind of stuff. So it's still a big tick in the box for the Apple Series 11 watch. I think it's nice and light. It's easy to wear. I think the fact that you're going to get it in a couple of sizes makes that even better, so you've got more choice. Overall, the build quality is really good. You know, it's just proper Apple Watch stuff, really. It just looks good. It's a beautiful thing out the box. Now, when you come to the new features, the Sleep Score is obviously a welcome addition. It's kind of hard to get excited about something that most other watches have had for ages. Though, as I said it in the Apple Watch Ultra 3 review, the transparency of how it's calculated is a happy thing, to be able to see where you're scoring points into your kind of overall sleep score across duration, sleep consistency, and the interruptions. Interestingly, though, I did lose points for going to bed earlier last night, which I can tell you was 100% necessary after the weekend that I'd had. Also, testing these two watches side by side, they often gave me different sleep scores, sometimes with a 10-point difference. So this is your warning to take your sleep tracking with a huge pinch of salt.
Early verdict on the Apple Watch Series 11 is I think you're getting a lot more of the same here from the Apple Watch compared to the Series 10. You've got a really lovely design, you've got pretty good sports tracking, lacking some pretty important features that you do get on dedicated sports watches or the Apple Watch Ultra 2. But it's a pretty accurate thing all round. It's a good health and sleep tracker. There's some interesting new additions in terms of the hypertension tracking, which we might get a bit more of a chance to test in the long run with the watch. But yeah, overall, it doesn't feel like a big leap forward on the Series 10, but you are getting a bit more battery life, which is always a plus. I think it's going to have the same relative strengths and weaknesses that the Apple Watch Series 10 had compared to the market at large. If you are looking at sports watches in its bracket, things like the new Garmin Venue 4 or the Vivo Active, you're going to get a slightly better and easier sports tracking experience with those watches in terms of having the right amount of buttons and slightly longer battery life and that kind of thing. But something I also said in the Apple Watch Ultra 3 review is one plus that the Apple Watch does have is that its price has not changed. And actually a lot of sports watches have gone up in price quite considerably this year, and maybe that positions it slightly different in the market, even compared to something like the Garmin Venue 4, which has come out now with a fairly a higher price than the Series 11, which makes it a little bit more attractive all round. But it's a really lovely watch. I really enjoy wearing it. I like the design a lot more actually than the Ultra series, which is that bit bigger, but it does still lack a few key sports tracking smarts. You're not getting quite the same level of precision with the GPS so far either.
So after really one day with the Apple Watch Series 11 and being able to track one run with it, how does it compare to my time with the Apple Watch Series 10? I would say it feels very similar to that time. If you look at the design is near identical, barring that kind of additional kind of protection against scratches that you're getting in both the titanium and the aluminium versions of the Series 11. I think sensors are the same, software, given that watchOS 26 and those features that are being promised there from a fitness and running point of view are going to roll back to the Series 10. There's not a huge amount here, I would say, that really kind of separates the two smartwatches. Now, this is a smartwatch that I think is really nice, and I do like the fact that Apple went bigger with that screen to kind of bring it a little bit closer to that big display that we get on the Apple Watch Ultra 2 and 3. But in terms of what I'm seeing so far, it doesn't feel like there's huge reasons to upgrade here, particularly if you're looking at the very kind of running focused features or qualities that might make it a better running watch.
So first impressions then, and it's only been 2 days, so this is really, really early thoughts, but I think the biggest takeaway for me so far is that the Apple Watch 11 changes are quite subtle in terms of the overall running performance and the general usability. You're going to get a similar performance to the Series 10. There are improvements, nothing particularly groundbreaking though, which is what I said about the Apple Watch Ultra 3 as well. This is a lovely piece of kit. Sometimes when you come back to wearing the Apple Watch from other dedicated sports watches, you remember how really lovely it is from a sort of looks and sort of slick styling perspective, and how wearable it is. Alongside the Apple Watch Ultra 3, it's still one of the smartest fitness watches going and one of the smartest running watches in the business. I've praised the Huawei Fit Pro 4 and there are things I like about the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8, but I still don't think those watches rival Apple for the daily life taming tools, the third-party apps, or that kind of slick UI design and general build quality. So, yeah, it's still leading in that sense. However, for me, it's not quite got the run and fitness tracking chops of a dedicated sports watch. I still don't think that I would choose this one over a Garmin just, for a pure play running watch. I still think you're kind of buying the Apple Watch Series 11 for the smartwatch rather than the running watch features as a priority. It's getting increasingly good at being a running watch. And with the smart use of third-party apps, you can do everything that your dedicated run watch can do, but it's just not quite got that sort of singularity of focus that I like from Garmin, Chorus and co. The GPS and heart rate look nicely reliable. The single charge battery life is still short by comparison to the sports watch rivals, but you should be able to get like a whole day marathon, not running a whole day marathon, but like a 5-6 hour marathon and the marathon day around it thrown in. Though if you're going Ultra, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 or the 2 is still going to be the one to go for, particularly if you're also regularly going off grid and out of network connection, where the Apple Watch Ultra 3 SATCOMs and safety tools are a really useful addition that you won't get here. Now, the biggest wins for the Series 11 are the battery life, somewhat tougher glass, 5G, and the new blood pressure and sleep score smarts. Now, those things may well be enough for you to sort of want to go out and get the latest watch. For me, I'm not 100% convinced that this one has enough to make you want to upgrade from a Series 10 to an 11 straight away. If you don't own an Apple Watch, then, and the budget stretches, then this one is going to be now the best Apple Watch you can get. The value proposition now sort of goes further down the chain. Maybe an Apple Watch Series 10 for a slightly cheaper might be your best bet. I think you're going to get quite a similar performance, though a little bit more battery life on the Series 11.
So there you have it, some initial multi-tester thoughts on the Apple Watch Series 11. And as mentioned, we have a lot of watches at the moment to test. So if you've got any questions while we are testing away on all of these watches, particularly around the Apple Watch Series 11, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos. And yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.